Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to break down this crazy of an episode. We had so many references in this episode. We got YoRHa Boys, and then potentially scenes that tie into Reincarnation. And with that, this is going to go into some spoiler territory, as we only have one episode left of this series. So this is my warning now. I am going to spoil things for you. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about it. The episode opens up with the red girls saying, "Let's play." Then we see Devola and Popola outside. Unfortunately, Popola does pass in this moment. And then we see Devola mourn over this. And then I like the visuals that we got with that tree in the distance. It looks like it could be a Japanese maple tree, but I'm also not an expert on trees, so if you know, let me know in the comments. But if it is this tree represents peace, longevity, and prosperity. 9S makes it up the tower by using the elevator, and A2 arrives at the tower and finds the destruction of all the machines. They find Devola and Popola, and Devola is infected. When A2 arrives, you hear Devola asking the same thing that we heard in the game. "We were useful, right?" And A2 tells her, "Yeah, you were." And A2 has to kill another infected android. This is now her third Mercy kill. First 2B, then Lily, and now Devola. Which is also interesting how we've gone full circle. When Devola died in Reincarnation, Popola went mad. And if A2 wasn't there to potentially stop Devola, we would have seen potentially Devola go crazy from the infection. The tower opens up for A2, and we're back to 9S. He comes across a room where he sees 2B. Just like in the game, the machines have taken over 2B's bodies. This time though, we get a creepy smile from them. 9S commands not for Pod to interfere, and he pulls out his Type 40 glove, which to me says that he wants to get up close and personal with this fight, and to cause as much pain as he could to these 2B machines. He yells at them, "This isn't how 2B moves." He takes them all out while yelling they are nothing like 2B, and to not worry, he will kill them all. Then there is one more left, and you hear it say 9s, and then 9S grabs her by the throat and starts to choke her. But then she smiles, and we hear a timer, and then all of a sudden there's an explosion. And the novel explains the reason he takes off his visor is because he doesn't need any extra data on these 2B models. He just wants to see all of her with his own eyes. Now, another thing to mention is 9S comes to the conclusion that they must have hacked into Adam's network and saw 9S's emotions and feelings towards 2B, which is potentially why we heard one of the 2B say 9s. Now, I'm going to read you some of the novel of 9S's point of view and thoughts during this battle. "See, it's so easy to break them. I'm going to slash and crush the faces, arms, legs that look just like yours, 2B. I won't leave anything behind, so no one can look at you. 1 body, 2 body, 3 bodies. At this rate, it's going to end too quickly, 2B. 4 bodies, 5 bodies, 6 bodies. How many left? Oh, so it's already over." That's some pretty twisted thoughts that were going through his head. A2 and Pod are walking up the tower, and Pod is showing what I saw as concern for A2. He wants her to stop to do some maintenance to make sure that she is okay. She keeps saying no need, and she finally stops and says, "Guess I made you worry." Then they make it to the library like what we saw in the game. This is a recreation of the library from Popola's village. Pod brings up Adam had a similar thing to store data, and when A2 tries to look at one of the files, she's pushed back by a barrier. She realizes she needs to hack in, and what I liked with this episode is she's struggling with her pride a bit, and she finally asks Pod, "Can you help out?" And he does, and he gives her the ability to hack, and she thanks him, which I thought was sweet because that's been their back and forth these last few episodes on thanking each other. In the game, Pod just gives her access and she says "Peachy," so I thought this was sweet and it was a nice touch. I like that their partnership is growing. When she hacks in, she finds a file on the tower and realizes it's a cannon aimed at the server on the moon. And then she discovers that humanity is extinct. We see an image of Leonardo da Vinci's artwork of Vertuvian Man is shown. I think it is impressive that it has lasted for centuries, but at the same time, it is the artwork that represents the quote-unquote perfect man, and that is something that I could see they've used to build these androids off of. We also see some of the same information we saw back in episode 15. Then another file appears, and it's the file on Project YoRHa. She learns the truth about Type E models and the plans of the destruction of the bunker, and she laughs. She had a feeling something like this was going on. I kind of wish we saw more reaction when she discovered the file on the Type E units. In the novel, number 2 recorded mediocre performance during simulation phase, yet number 2 was the lone survivor from her squadron. And after analyzing the saved personal data of number 2, it was discussed that number 2 was capable of excellent decision making under extreme duress. Number 2's personal data was uploaded to all newly constructed Type E models. So maybe she saw this report, maybe she didn't, maybe they're waiting to show that to her later. But overall, looking at it for the story, it doesn't impact the story that much. Now we get the hidden reports. Report 1 says, traces of Group B's disguised infiltration has been confirmed. Currently gathering more information information. And then report 2 says, contact with 2 investigators have been lost. Reinforcements have been requested for this branch. All right, I'm thinking this group B got into the pod network. Maybe that is what is happening. The association, it looks like, sent people to investigate, but then they lost them. So I wonder what's going to happen in the next episode. I'm still going off the expectation that we will not see Accord, but you never know. We're back to 9S and the red girls are watching him. He's missing an arm. He lost it during the explosion, but I did notice something. It is a different arm from the game. It looks like they've been flipped around. Also, I noticed that the promotional art for this season even foreshadowed the missing arm from 9S and 2B. He then tells Pod to take 2B's arm and put it on him, like what we saw in the game, but this time we see it in the quote-unquote eyes of the red girls. You hear them try to decide if they should tell him some more secrets of the world this time. They wonder what will happen then, and then they talk about how fun it'll be. Once he puts on the arm, you hear the same thing like we do in the game. He says they have to fight, and we hear Pod telling him that he is infected with a virus, just like how he was in the game. And in the game, you do actually hack yourself to eliminate the virus, but this time around, you see he doesn't. He comes into the big open area, and the red girls are there to greet him. The red girls are explaining how they have been watching the androids and how they are a network of machine life forms. They tell 9S since he came all this way, they're going to share with him some information. At first 9S isn't interested, but then they finally say it's about Project YoRHa. Now in the game, before you get this information, there is a little bit of a fight that gets dragged on, so I'm glad they just skipped that. And then we see them hack into 9S. Then it cuts into A2 getting out of the hack, which I thought was a nice touch. Something got to her because she drops, and then we see the red girls behind her. And when she throws her sword back, I feel like this paid homage to the game when A2 was in the desert after being hacked and throws her sword at this ghost 2B figure. But anyway, the dialogue that the girls are having with A2 is the same as the game. They're saying it's been a long time, number 2, or should we call you A2? Now that we've seen what happened to A2 back in episode 16, I feel like hearing that now is a bit more weight compared to the game. The red girls are taunting A2, and you even hear them tell A2 that her existence is worthless, which, rude. And then we see a giant machine crash through the ceiling, and it is Ko-Shi. I did notice in the game, the machines actually tell 9S his existence is meaningless. So they made this switch, which is interesting. I'm not really sure if it's going to be a huge thing, but it is something that I noticed. Now back to 9S, and we see that TV like we saw back in episode 12. And we see the same files that we saw in the game that Commander shares with 9S at the end of Route B, but since that never happened in this anime, he's only now getting them. And then we see the original 9 unit looking down on Earth, and it looks like he's in lab number 6, which, safe to say, is Labo. Then you see the file and the shipments that went up to the server, and then you get these in the game when you're exploring the server at the end of Route B. Now the next scene surprised me, and I'm sure a lot of you as well. We see our first look at Zinnia and the original number 2 and number 9 models. Then you see a dead person floating in the air. Then you see the original number 2 stab the original number 9. Now to get into this backstory and who this dead girl is, you can find this in the prologue for the novel YoRHa Boys. I'll also put a link to the music concert of Project YoRHa story in my description, and you can also find some of this information as well in the Nier Automata World Guide Volume 2. I'll give you a quick story on this. So Zinnia is the scientist that created YoRHa. Number 2 and number 9 called him father. Number 2 asks Zinnia if she can have a real name like him. He hesitates, and number 9 wonders why he hesitated. So number 9, being the curious person that he is, hacks into the server, and he discovers a large amount of data missing. And when he recovers it all, he learns the truth about the black boxes and how it's made from machine cores. And guess what? He doesn't do well to that news. He also learns the truth about humanity being extinct, and that YoRHa are just created as morale boosters in this war against the machines. He then starts to begin his new version of this project. He ends up killing number 21, which I know we had a female 21 that was with number 2 on the Pearl Harbor descent, but this specific version of number 21 is a male. And then on his way to Zinnia, he kills number 4, and that is who this mysterious person is. It's the original number 4. You could tell by her long hair, it looks just like number 4 from episode 6 and 16. The facility Labo begins to catch fire. That's because of the damage number 9 caused to the lab. The gravity is busted, which is also why we see her floating. He makes his way to Zinnia and confronts him, and it is pretty brutal. Number 9 wants to make sure that Zinnia suffers for the betrayal that he feels. Number 9 hides and waits for number 2 to come to Zinnia's room. He knows that number 2 is stronger than him, so he chooses to try to do a sneak attack on her. She was able to avoid any fatal damage from his sneak attack, and she doesn't understand why he's doing this. And number 9 tells her the truth about a project and how they are no different from machines. That is why they won't even be given names, because they are the same as the monsters they are created to fight. The project had a flaw in it. As long as the bunker and the Council of Humanity were around, there was a risk risk of information being leaked about humanity. But that is where number 9 stepped in to add to the project to avoid leaks. So number 9 created a backdoor. Once time has passed, a backdoor will open for the machine life forms to come in and destroy the bunker. This way, the truth can never get out. Those who are a part of the project will be dead, and all they will hear is the message from the moon, and the secret will remain a secret forever, and essentially creating a god for the androids to worship. Ah yes, Nietzsche, we meet again. Number 9 calls this plan Project YoRHa. Number 2 says enough, this has to stop, and then that is how we get our next image of number 2 stabbing number 9. It is the beginning of their never-ending cycle. Number 9 did plan this on purpose. He wanted to be killed by number 2, but he knew she was soft and wouldn't do it without a purpose. Number 9 wasn't concerned though. Specifications on number 2 and number 9 were on the lunar server. They will meet again and die again, over and over again, and this would continue to keep happening, which is why in my last episode breakdown I theorized that this is why they kept making 9S models, but they had no idea why in the last episode. Then just like in the game, we get that zoomed in look on 9S's face with the red girls behind him. We hear the red girls ask the same thing. Now that you know the truth, do you still wish to fight? Then a giant machine climbs up in front of 9S, and it's Ro-shi. Now if you didn't know, Ro-shi and Ko-Shi are Chinese philosophers. Ko-Shi is also known as Confucius. His philosophical teachings emphasize personal and government morality, harmonizing social relationships, righteousness, kindness, sincerity, and a ruler's responsibility to lead by virtue. Ro-shi is also known as Lao Shu, founder of Taoism. Taoists believe in inaction, simplicity, and living in harmony with nature. Then we see through the red girl's eyes on their TV, A2 is fighting Ko-Shi and 9S is fighting Ro-shi. Now I noticed that A2 is running from behind to attack Ko-Shi is similar to A2 in episode 4. Now this is a stretch, I will admit that, but I think of this as it is because 2E and all E-type units have A2's personality installed in them, capable of excellent decision making under extreme duress. A stretch, I know, because any logical person would try to sneak up from behind and do a sneak attack. While all this is playing out, we hear the red girls talk about how androids wanted to act like humans, and then machines wanted to act like humans, but machines got too close, and they grew in diversity. When we see A2 running, it almost looks similar to Reincarnation when you're exploring the cage. But similar to the game, Pod discovers a weakness in the red girls. Pod starts to explain, and A2 says, I don't know what you mean. And he summarized it as, the enemy has been infected. You need to endure until the time comes. She says, things like that, I do well. Then we see the red girls in the hack space like we did in the game. It is all the same dialogue from the game as well for the most part. But then we start to see the red girls have a disagreement. Their dialogue sounds like the outcome of ending C and D. One side wants to continue fighting the androids to evolve, while the other side of the red girls wants to go explore new land. Then we're back to A2 and she's on top of the tower fighting Ko-Shi, and then 9S also appears fighting Ro-shi. Then we see the machines starting to fight each other. Pod says the infection was a success. And we see the red girls again, and they're choking each other. Then only one survives and flies towards the light. Now in the game, Pod did in a way infect them and cause them to fight each other. And A2 points out in the game that they're actually human fighting each other like that. Just the thing is, it looks like no one survives in the game because those girls hacked A2, so she kills off the last one. But we could see one of them survived here and goes into the light. The other thing too is while the red girls are fighting each other, you hear them talk about how they see the light and they need to move forward. Now we also see in Nier Reincarnation, we see one of the red girls is alive. From what I understand, Reincarnation is multiple different branches. So I'm not sure if this leads directly into Reincarnation, but it is a thought that I have. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Then we see a very familiar scene. 9S and A2 meet. A2 tells 9S that the tower is a cannon aimed at the moon server, and 9S says the same thing. He doesn't care. What does it all matter? 9S talks about how they aren't needed in this world. Humanity is gone. Obviously this is playing out just like in the game. And watching this moment, 9S is talking about how they're all sacrificial lambs. And isn't that hilarious? And now that we saw A2 and what she's gone through, it's interesting looking at how calm she is, because she was also a sacrificial lamb, but she survived. A2 begins to say something, but he will not hear any more from A2. A2 then begins to explain the same thing we saw in the game, how 2B was in agony killing 9S over and over again, and how her real identity was 2E. And his next line shows how much he just isn't listening to A2. I kind of laughed when I saw this. A2 just explained how much agony 2B was in, and he tells her to shut up, that she doesn't know how much agony 2B was in. Alright, she literally just said it. But then we see his eyes glow red, and he says the same thing in the game. And he also tells Bod basically to stop talking till 9S and A2 are confirmed dead, but how he commands it is different this time around. 9S orders ordered 153 to halt all arbitrary thought and speech rather than all thought and speech, arbitrary or otherwise. This could imply that Pod has more freedom to do something in this next episode. Not sure what, or if we actually see something, but we could see something. And then we see them prepare to fight, and then the episode ends. And the novel explains that part of 9S's frustration is that A2 has the same face as 2B, so he can't even stand the sight of her. But also at this point in the novel, he's crazy and wants everything to stop talking and making noise. All he wants to hear is 2B and only 2B. Then the episode title shows up, and it's Meaningless Code, which is ending C of the game, which is where A2 hacks into 9S and saves him and then takes out the tower, which means that next week's episode is ending E, end of the YoRHa, which I have no idea how this episode's gonna end. I don't think it's gonna end exactly like ending E. I also still have unanswered questions.
We are not allowed to rest until we attain God through means of Process 11.
Like, what is Process 11? The Council of Humanity was talking about attaining God through Process 11. We still haven't gotten that answer, and I wonder if that ties into this terrible ending for this branch that Accord is tracking. Then there's the obvious of Accord's reports. I'm thinking if the previous reports of A2 being a singularity, and this talk about Group B infiltrating the pod network, I wonder if the pods are going to interfere with this fight, or at least the outcome of this anime. I personally don't want to see a repeat of the same ending that we got in the games. I want to see something new and different, which it seems like we are getting something different. But what do you guys think? Did I miss any details in this episode? There was definitely a lot to go over. What do you think the series finale will be? Also, with Tokyo Game Show being next week, do you expect any announcements from Yoko Taro? I'm going off the assumption no, but can't help but point out the timing of this anime ending and Tokyo Game Show starting. Let me know in the comments. Also, thank you for the support. I do have a Discord channel in the description if you guys would like to join that for more conversations with me and some other fans of the show, as well as other games and anime as well. Thanks again, everyone, for the support, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.